IBS Mining Weekly is interviewing Roger Baxter, the outgoing CEO of the Minerals Council South Africa. Roger, after 3 decades in the Minerals Council South Africa and the Chamber before that, what is your biggest takeaway as you prepare to depart from the mining employer organization?
Martin, let me start by saying, when I first joined the Chamber of Mines back in 1992, it was an organization that was dominated by the gold mining industry with a bit of coal and a bit of diamonds. It was an organization which had over 600 employees. It was an organization that was at a leadership level, mostly pale, mostly male. And it was an industry in that year, in 1992, when I first joined, where there were 551 fatalities in the sector in that year. In 2022-2023, just to highlight, we are an industry body now renamed as the Minerals Council South Africa. We had the lowest level of fatalities in the recorded history of the industry at 49 last year. Yes, it's 49 people, too many from a fatalities perspective, but a lot of attention being focused there. We've got more than 60 different minerals that are mined by our members, representing 90% of the value of mineral production in South Africa and more than 90% of employment. We have a 32-member board, greatly diversified board from both a race and from a gender perspective. And we've had a lady president of the Minerals Council for the last 3 years, which is quite a significant achievement, given that 131 years had all been male-dominated during that period. And so when I reflect back, it's been a period of profound change during that period. We've also had the unlocking of democracy in South Africa. We've had complete reform of the entire minerals policy process in the country. But we can touch on a number of things, but I can highlight that, if I look at maybe 2 or 3 of the critical points, significant progress on improving health and safety in the sector. If I think of just fatalities, but also in terms of the way that we managed COVID and how we've managed occupational diseases in the sector. If I reflect on the fact that we were able to completely rebrand the organization into one of the most respected business advocacy organizations in the country. And then if I think of the work that we've done to drive the transformation agenda, where this industry is very different from what it was in 1992 when I first joined, including having 72,500 women in the sector, versus virtually none when I first joined, and significant change at both the ownership level as well as at the employment equity level. When I go to Colliery Managers Association members meetings, the majority of the members are Black South Africans who've earned their keep, earned their stripes in the sector. And so that transformative change has been quite profound. And maybe the last point to make, which would be close to your heart, is we've also recently re-embedded the modernization of the sector and our focus on research, development and innovation through our partnership with the Mandela Mining Precinct, the Department of Sciences and Technology, and obviously with the CSIR. And we spent 500 million on that already in the last 5 years, and some good progress made on certain points. So this is an industry that really matters for the country.
Now, you've done remarkably well, Roger. And what regulatory environment does mining need, in your view, in South Africa to be able to compete on a level footing with other mining jurisdictions?
So Martin, I think what's important to state is that the regulatory framework is just but one. If you look at the Fraser Institute survey report on South Africa for 2022, the worst ranked area for us was actually security. So, we need to, and we are focused on the issues around improving security environment in South Africa, but we need obviously government to come to the party on that. And 2 or 3 of the other critical issues are around the fact that our logistics has fallen off over the last 5 years by 40%, and we don't have reliable electricity supply. And those sort of factors were very much to our advantage 5-10 years ago, have now become negatives in the Fraser Institute survey report. So just to highlight those, if we can't fix those issues, you can have the best regulatory environment in the world, but if you're not sorting out crime, logistics, and the heartbeat of the economy, which is electricity supply, we're not going to be able to really grow our sector. But on the regulatory front, the biggest issues that we need, first of all, we do need a transparent, online, off-the-shelf cadastral system, which is very easily accessible online for free with all the pre-competitive geological information, who's got what prospecting right where, so you can go in and apply. We need to have the regulatory framework organized in a way that it takes no more than 2 to 3 months to get a prospecting right versus the current 354 days, which it simply doesn't work, particularly for venture capital exploration. And we need to get all the backlog of the regulatory approvals cleared out the way, which the DMRE is now committed to do. And so those are bits of the framework that we need to have in place. We need to have an exploration plan, and in particular, a lot more incentives around venture capital funding, which in our view should be the flow-through shares equivalent, which is borrowing from the Canadian model, to really get venture capital funded exploration ignited in South Africa to unlock this pipeline of new exploration projects, which could unleash more investment in the mining sector. So those are the areas that we've been certainly engaging government on, and hopefully, the minister did say last week that the 5 preferred candidates for the cadastral system have been listed. They are going to be looking at choosing one of them by the end of July. So let's see what happens.
Unemployment, inequality, and poverty are 3 South African scourges. If given the right environment, and maybe beyond regulatory environment, does mining have the power to crush unemployment, inequality, and poverty in your view?
So Martin, let me start by saying that South Africa has a completely unsustainable unemployment crisis. We've got more than 10 million people unemployed if you use the expanded definition, with about a 43% unemployment rate. And we've got an unemployment rate of 63% in youngsters between the ages of 15 to 24. So it is completely unsustainable. It is a significant contributor to our high Gini coefficient, which is the measure of income inequality around the world. And so, yes, it's critically important for government, business, and labor to focus on how we can really get this country growing. In our view, if we could grow the economy by 5% per year for the next decade, or at least the next 12 years, remember, if you have a 5% growth rate for 12 years, you can actually double the size of the economy. You could actually halve the unemployment rate. So it's not just about what mining can do. So coming back to answering your question, mining is a part of the solution, but it's not mining alone, because we already have 475,000 people employed in the industry. Yes, we could grow that further if we were able to unlock greater investment in the sector, but it's also in the rest of the economy that we need to unlock growth. But you can only unlock that growth in the rest of the economy if we can solve some of those security and crime issues, which is part of the B4SA BUSA initiative that was announced by the President and by B4SA last week, as well as resolving the blockages to our vascular system, which is obviously the logistics issues that also has been put into a specific task group with government and business. And then the third one obviously being energy, which is the heartbeat of the economy. Because, as I like to say, if the heartbeat is weak and the vascular system is blocked, then the body of the economy is in the ICU. But as the private sector, in our view, we can unlock the vascular system by applying private sector stents, and we can unlock the heartbeat of the economy by applying also a private sector defibrillator. And I think we've probably more now than ever seen the willingness of government to understand that we need to drive these issues and work in partnership to solve them. And you can see that with the energy policy reforms that took place last year, probably the biggest structural reforms in South Africa in 20 years.
And just getting back to this public sector, private sector partnership and initiative, do you think it's got the wherewithal to succeed in improving energy and logistics and defeating crime?
So, Martin, it's quite important to appreciate where we are. I mean, the government over a decade was significantly exposed to state capture and the hollowing out of capacity. Voluntary separation packages given to qualified people in the state-owned companies, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to appreciate that our state-owned enterprises don't have enough capacity to run the size of the companies that they have in place. So the private sector, on the other hand, does have a lot of technical expertise, managerial capacity, project management capacity, etc. So when you bring those two together with a willing political partner on the other side, you can unlock a way of sorting out these particular challenges, whether it's private sector playing a role in private concessioning on rail networks, bringing in locos, bringing in other sources of capability to supplement and complement what Transnet might be doing. In my view, these could be significant game changers. But it's early in the process. On the energy side, we're more advanced. I mean, in mining alone, we're going to do something like 1 gigawatt of new solar projects in the sector this year, 2 gigawatts next year, 2 gigawatts in 2025. But let's also appreciate that there are some very significant constraints on energy, where the transmission network to the Northern Cape is very underdeveloped, and we do need a state-owned national transmission company to be established to urgently invest in expanding that network, so we can obviously set up the solar plants and others in the Northern Cape. It's probably one of the biggest areas that's holding back investment in more renewable energy projects in South Africa, as an example. So can it work in each of these areas? Well, from my particular perspective, with business involvement, with a willingness on government to play a constructive role, and the SOEs appreciating that business is a partner, I think that we can make some improvements to the current environment.
The other jurisdictions, energy, logistics, and absence of crime, they're given. But what are the other big obstacles in the way of a really prosperous South African mining industry beyond that?
So within the domestic environment, we do have some very specific constraints in relation to the fact that we have over 5,000 outstanding prospecting rights, mining rights, Section 11 approvals within the DMRE system. So there's too many that are outstanding. I mean, the department has halved that number, but it just demonstrates that there are backlogs there. But I think having in place a online transparent cadastral system will play a big role in unlocking that capability. But instead of allowing or legislating for a prospecting right to be issued within a year, it should be done within 2 to 3 months in our view. So shortening the timelines, putting in place less requirements and keeping it stable and predictable are some of the key issues in terms of unlocking exploration in South Africa, obviously with the addition of other incentives around flow-through shares as a tax incentive, to encourage greater funding for venture capital exploration companies. So those are a couple of the other areas which are critical. But, we do a lot of work in local areas because local government has also been not performing. And getting local government back to a level where it can perform is an important issue. And so, these are some of the points that we're dealing with, in addition to the security, logistics, and obviously energy issues.
And finally, Roger, what is your main departing message as you leave for other pastures?
Martin, listen, it's been an incredible journey. I've been incredibly privileged to have played a leadership role in an industry. My blood is green. I've really enjoyed the sector. I'll somehow re-emerge in the sector at some point in the future. But if I think about all my colleagues, we've got a very well-capacitated Minerals Council in place. It's very well led through the Minerals Council office bearers, and the incoming CEO, Mzila Mfunjani, is a very capable leader. So I've got no doubt they'll keep on pushing the positive reform agenda and being the change that they want to see, because ultimately, I'm a firm believer that with them, we are going to be able to hashtag making mining matter.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Roger Baxter, the outgoing CEO of Minerals Council South Africa.